What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I am Morrow, your storyteller for today. With me I have some more RPG horror stories. I've had a lot of personal stuff going on. Actually, I didn't talk about it. I made a community post on the channel, but I had a family passing. My aunt, she unfortunately passed away after battling with cancer for a while. Different complications happened that were outside of cancer, but from what I've been told by family, it's been a lot, and I've been just trying to process it. And the best way for me to process it is by just putting my nose to the grindstone and just work or this channel and just keep myself busy. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for welcoming me back. I feel like I'm better now. I feel like I'm able to focus again and able to just, I don't know, like stick to this for my mental health. Weirdly enough, this YouTube channel is great for my mental health. I don't know why. Either way, let's go ahead and get some RPG horror stories for today. New DM runs for toxic group. Player tries to essay an NPC. GM continues with group because he's socially starved. Alrighty, that is my first and last horror story. It was a good while ago, so I will have a hard time remembering this whole thing. I'm sorry if this feels disorganized and fragmented. Maybe I should have just stuck with the main thing, but I think the overall context made me feel worse than the actual incident. Also, as much as I like to play victim, honestly might be making myself look better than I actually was. Y'all gonna see that I messed up a lot as well. Anyway, enjoy. This all went down in late 2019 when I, 21 male, now about 15. I got obsessed with D&D thanks to live shows like Critical Role and Brazilian streams like Rola o Dado and Jogando RPG. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, I definitely didn't. I love creating stories, fanfics, and drone OCs, but I struggled to share those hobbies because I was afraid of being seen as weird. I was a difficult kid, really immature, loud, and socially awkward with a lot of insecurities, especially around my interests. But the idea of making something of those stories I wrote and do more with my friends through D&D, that was everything. I convinced my small group of high school friends to try Lost Mines of Phandelver. Since 5e wasn't in Portuguese yet and will no longer be apparently, screw you Watsy, I parted a fan translation and translated the module on the fly. Fortunately, they didn't really like it. The real story starts a few weeks later when I was dead set about finding a way to play Dungeons & Dragons. I joined a popular Facebook group where people posted about their games. First, I wanted to join as a player since I was so new, but after struggling to find a group, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I dove into learning the module, watched videos on GMs in both English and Portuguese, and even figured out Roll20 so we could have automated character sheets and pretty maps. I posted my own game for Lost Mines and waited. I was determined. I was decided. I was focused. Nothing would stop me from finally playing D&D. I quickly found 4 players, 3 who were already friends and played together in another campaign. They were super nice and supportive when I mentioned I was new to D&D. We scheduled a session 0, got characters ready, and soon had a campaign lined up to play. First up, Warlock, a half-elf player who wasn't bad in game but has a taste for the group's crude sense of humor. More on that later. His character was super edgy, fine on his own, but in the group, it just added to the unpleasant experience. Then there's Cleric. He played an Aasimar and easily the most chill. He didn't join the bad behavior, but was a bit too passive, letting the others get away with it most times. And as you will hear, I did the very same, and I can't point fingers at him. Still, he was a solid player, and even helped me out sometimes. Maybe if I had been more vocal about some things, he'd be on my side. There was another guy, a monk, who left halfway through the campaign before it went to crap. Monks usually catch bullets, this guy dodged one. And then there is Artificer. Artificer was the GM for the other game the 3 played, and our main problem player here. He played a drow, and he was pretty much a caricature of an edgelord. Now listen, teenage me drank the cringe juice as well. I liked goth and punk stuff as much as any kid born in early 2000s. My life soundtrack was pretty much Hybrid Theory, Still Rules. Elf from Death Note was so me. He's just like me, for real, for real. And I was a Teemo main on League. You had me until you said League of Legends. Gotta be honest. But yeah, I feel like most of us have gone through that kind of edgy phase. I just like to wear dark clothing and listen to a lot of Disturbed, System of a Down, 3 Days Grace. When I first arrived to America, I've discovered my love for metal. I never heard metal until I arrived to America. And then I got my little, what's it called again? It's like an MP3 player. It was a Sansa. I think that's the brand name. It was some sort of knockoff. But it was great because it got me to explore all kinds of bands. Breaking Benjamin, Three Doors Down, just all the alt metal stuff. It was so good. But Artificer, he was obnoxious kind of edgy. The dude who would call you a poser if you didn't know X or Y band. Did people even say the word poser in 2019? Kinda cringe, bro. He'd lead into the D&D satanic thing and constantly brag about being a Satanist and a psychopath. Anytime I'd say something like, thank God or Jesus, he'd butt in with, don't you mean Satan? When I didn't mind at first, but it got old real quick. He would also take advantage of my lack of knowledge on the rules to get his way, calling his rules I didn't know only to favor himself. He'd barely roleplay even if an NPC would blatantly engage him in conversation. He'd say stuff like, oh, my character's not social, and remain completely silent, unless he was making some mean comments to basically every NPC. That's not edgy, that's just annoying. Anybody that claims, I'm a psychopath, who are you trying to impress? Because you're not impressing anybody. Before we dive into the game, bear with me just a little longer because there are 3 things that I need to mention. When we started, the Artificer class had just dropped. Artificer wanted to try it, but didn't have the Eberron book. So he sent me the Unearthed Arcana version. I wasn't sure about how the class worked or what Unearthed Arcana was either, but he said it was official WotC material and perfectly balanced. I didn't want to be a buzzkill, so I allowed it. So keep in mind, I don't know what an Artificer is supposed to be. For those that don't know, Unearthed Arcana is similar to like beta content or work in progress, probably broken test material. Some of it can be okay, some of it can be fine. There's a subclass for Druid, Circle of the Primeval, which is pretty dope, and I kind of like it honestly a lot. I like it a lot. I think it's really cool. But yeah, that's still technically considered Unearthed Arcana. I'd still recommend it. It's super fun. But anyway, let's continue. I was the youngest in the group, still a minor, while some of them were in the early 20s. From the videos I'd watched, I learned about session zeros and boundaries. The only rules I set were no sexual violence and avoiding topics of racism, since I'm a person of color myself and it made me uncomfortable. Sorry for the wait, but let's finally dive into the campaign. First few sessions actually went well. The party was a group of hired mercenaries tasked with delivering mining supplies to Phandalin. Their employer and old friend, Gunren Rockseeker, has gone ahead with the other half of the supplies, accompanied by his bodyguard Sildar. As they followed the same path, they stumbled upon Gundren's horses, lying dead in the middle of the road. Moments later, they were ambushed by goblins who retreated after being overpowered. The cleric discovered tracks that most likely led to where the goblins had fled, possibly taking Gundren and Sildar with them. After some discussion, the party decided to follow the tracks to Wave Echo Cave. They managed to slowly clear the entire cave over the next 2 sessions with only 1 close call. It was a blast! I had so much fun. After the first session and a few sessions after that, everyone was really nice to me. Artificer kept praising me, saying things like how he couldn't believe it was my first time GMing, how mature I was for my age, how good my descriptions were, and how talented I was despite a few slip-ups here and there, and how much potential I had. I was over the moon. Not only was I finally getting to play D&D, but my attention-starved self was being showered with compliments and kind words for all the excitement and effort I put into the game. Oh, my sweet summer child. Trying to give a lot of praise and attention to an impressionable youth, I feel like that's a manipulation tactic. Like, on one hand, yeah, they could just be really nice about it, and maybe the kid is running a good game, but the title says otherwise. I feel like they're gonna try to bully the kid now. Maybe. We'll see. Between sessions 2 or 3, Artificer approached me, wanting to switch classes. He thought the Artificer would be more combat-focused, but found it heavily focused on utility and support with its infusions, which he didn't like. He asked if he could use an older version of the class, and not knowing how that would work, I naively agreed, believing he had the most experience and thus knew better than me. Fast forward years later and I'm still trying to figure out what the hell he was actually playing. His character sheet looked unrecognizable to me, but I vaguely theorized that he was using the 4th edition Artificer BS into 5e. I can't be sure though. The results were wild. He would brew bonus action acid vials every turn to throw at enemies, rolling an attack against the AC and dealing like 3 or 4d4 plus intelligence acid damage to both the target and every adjacent enemy. He would also brew minor healing potions as a bonus action, healing just as much as the acid did damage, all the while being able to cast wizard spells and shooting light crossbow every turn with his main action. None of that cost any material, money, spell slots, no nothing. Meanwhile, I had no clue what was going on. I just went along with it. No one else seemed to question it, so it must have been right, isn't it? That's just how Artificer works. Even with Unearthed Arcana, I doubt you could just brew a healing potion used as a bonus action. I don't think that's a thing you can do. Maybe some of the Unearthed Arcana material was kind of unbalanced. I think this guy's just cheating. That or he's pulling out some random material from somewhere else. Maybe he's using Pathfinder rules or something. Who knows? Honestly, I have no idea what kind of thing he's running. After rescuing Sildar, the group discovered Gundren is still nowhere to be found. And after some exposition about the title mines of Phandelver, they head to town. The party first visit Bothrin's Provisions, where they first agree to deliver the supplies. They do so and tell Bothrin the news about Gundren. Upon hearing of Gundren's disappearance, Bothrin, a broker and old friend of the party's employee, beckons him to find him. By the gods, is there any way you will be able to find him? The Gundren is a tough cookie, but gods know what might happen to him if you don't find a way to save him. Of course, now that we've secured Sildar, we'll look for him as well. Oh, Gundren, at this hour, the dwarf is probably being made a lady by goblins.
Lol, yeah, if he even is alive, will you beg us to kill him?
That took me off guard. I should mention that I'm bi, but wasn't out at the time. I was unfortunately accustomed to casual homophobia, growing up in a very conservative family. That made me kind of uncomfortable. I really don't like these kind of jokes. I should have said that it wasn't okay to say that, but I was afraid of confrontation. I didn't want to run the game, so I just let it go. Probably something you should have set up from session 0, that I feel like for these kind of guys, they're gonna just be pushing the envelope again and again. Listen, if something makes you uncomfortable, no matter who you are, a player, DM, whatever, best thing to do about these sort of situations is just talk them out in the open. If you're not comfortable with specific type of humor or jokes or anything, quotation humor, because it's usually not really that funny. You want to make sure that you talk about this sort of stuff ahead of time and that everybody is on the same page about like, okay, here are the do's, here are the don'ts, okay, we're all on board. Because like session 0's matter, you know? You already had the other rules set up from session 0, probably should have tagged that one on as well. But let's continue. That gave them the go-ahead to make these kind of jokes constantly, both in and out of game. They'll also make some passive-aggressive comments about me, presumably for something I did in game, or when I couldn't run a game that week for some reason, that mocked me. Artificer once at everyone, and I responded with this stupid meme.
Hey, who pinged?
That made it so that they'd make really homophobic and transphobic comments to me, tell me I had weird fetishes, and God did not let that go, as much as I'd tell them to stop. It was every day for months. Wait, that procced homophobic and transphobic comments? Huh? Warlock once made a comment about doing to me as they did to the last GM if I messed up, which got laughs and passive-aggressive comments by the other players and obviously freaked me out at the time. I can't believe we decided to still play with these people. They're kind of showing really weird, creepy behavior. And you okay with it? You don't want to be like, yo, guys, can I cut it out, or I don't want to DM anymore. You're allowed to show that you're uncomfortable with specific type of comments, especially if they're being like, don't make us do what we did to our last GM. I think that's kind of a red flag that this group is probably not good to play with, honestly. But I know what, there's a lot more to this story, so we're gonna go ahead and continue with this disaster. What did they do to the last GM? It almost sounds like some kind of ominous ritual. I am to this day curious to know what horrors the last GM had faced. Are they alive? Or is it a fate worse than death? Meanwhile, they still praised me, saying I was getting better as a GM. They gave me hints on how to improve, tell me how cool I was, gave me a reason to stay. The game was fun, and they were cool most of the time, so I kept going. I realize now that I was largely to blame for not enforcing my boundaries at the time, but further than that, I also can't deny that I also participated in many of these toxic behaviors. I wanted to be included. I made offensive jokes from time to time and laughed at some, even if I felt uncomfortable with some others. In that way, I enabled that behavior. If I didn't, maybe it wouldn't have been as bad as it was. Can't really claim to have been a victim in this if I was nurturing the environment that made me uncomfortable. I was just as bad as them, so why should they even consider toning it down? If you made the same kind of jokes and you even laughed at them, like if they were genuinely funny at the time, then yeah, I feel like you are part of the problem. If you continue with the same jokes and not trying to foster an environment that's more comfortable for you, but if you're giggling along with them about the jokes and making the same jokes they're doing, like listen, I'm not gonna OP blame, but like it makes you as bad as them. If you continue with the jokes, if everybody is making jokes about the same thing together, whether they be homophobic jokes or transphobic jokes or any kind of bigoted jokes or messed up jokes or racist jokes or anything at all, you're kind of part of the problem. I get it, you're young and everything, but in every young person's time, there's a moment where you can choose to do what you want to do. You have free will. And yeah, I understand social interaction and stuff. You want to play with your buddies and D&D and everything. You're enjoying yourself at that time. But at the end of the day, if something is making you uncomfortable, you don't have to be part of that. You could leave. You could play with somebody else. No D&D is better than bad D&D, and your time is way better spent looking for a game enjoyable than not playing a crap D&D, especially if you're not enjoying this, but clearly you were. I don't know, man. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this OP right now. Looking back, I still feel really bad about some things I said during those calls, about groups of people who today are amongst the people I love the most. People like me. Even though I was young and nobody important heard those conversations, I know I'm still responsible for things I did as a teenager, and I was laughing at horrible crap. I remember what I said. If I can take anything away from the experience, it is that I should always cut this kind of behavior by the root and just be better than that horrible brat. At least you grew up and you're self-aware, and that's what matters, you know? The game progressed as the party encountered the Red Brands, a band of bandits who had taken over the town. After quick combat, they discovered their hideout and started investigating. They made their way into the dungeon, and everything was fine. They fought some mummies, some Red Brands, freed some prisoners, and had a very cool encounter with a Nothic. Then they sneaked into a certain room in that dungeon. Undescribed. You'll hear the sound of snoring as you're peeking through the crack at the door. You see a group of Red Brand thugs, all seated or leaning onto the table, in which a set of gaming cards is sprawled on top of. Immersed in a deep stupor, the drunken thugs all seem to be drifting into the different levels of sleep. The smell of alcohol fills your nostrils as you notice half-open barrels of cheap booze to the side of the room. Now, this is supposed to be a fun little break from all the fighting. These Red Brands are all drunk and have disadvantage in all their skill checks. There's basically a guaranteed surprise round for the party since these bandits are so drunk, so this is hardly even a fight. We even made jokes about how they were playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering. It was fun. Oh, everything was so okay. Do any of these bandits seem different from the ones we fought so far? The cleric asked. Now, whenever someone would ask for a description of an NPC that didn't have a description already, I would roll on a little table I found on the internet that would have names, race, and usually one of our characteristics. You see a half-orcish man with X features, a human woman with Y features, and a human man with similar features, and drow woman with Z features. They seem to be dressed as every other Red Brand. Artificer's eyes lighten up in such a way I could tell even if I couldn't see him.
Oh, there's a female drow?
Now, as Artificer was also a drow, and it wasn't usual to find a drow out on the surface in the Forgotten Realms, I imagine he must have been curious to know what she was doing as a Red Brand, when he specifically called for non-lethal attacks when hitting the lady, though it further confirmed some kind of kinship towards her. The Warlock tried to kill her anyway, because edgy Hexblade spares nobody. Unfortunately for me, that goddamn Eldritch Blast didn't do enough damage to kill her in one go. The one time I ever needed unnecessary NPC murder, the cleric knocks her out at the Artificer's request. As the party looted the corpses, I, who was happy Warlock didn't finish her off, began to look forward to the potential role-playing interactions between the Drow Lady and Artificer. I even rolled her name and was thinking about her background, already brainstorming reasons of why she was working for the big bad for this adventure, who is also a Drow. Maybe she could be a recurring character. And then,
I'm going to walk up to the drow and start take off her clothes.
lol, that's messed up.
I'm going to take out my dagger and tear her clothes apart all the way to her bra. I'll use the cloth to gag her, and then...
I was stunned. Couldn't get a word out as he kept describing it, and describe he did. As you might have realized by the way I transcribed the dialogue, I'm a bit shy about writing the exact words I remember. But trust me, it's a very, very vivid detail. I just stood there for a few seconds before I finally got to a point where I managed to say something. You cannot do any of that. Look, we agreed in session 0, no sexual violence.
She's passed out and is not resisting, so I'm not doing sexual violence.
You're describing struggle snuggle. You are literally doing that.
Well, she's a drow, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, I hate this Artificer character already. I really do. This is the right time. I hope this is the time you say, no, I'm putting my foot down, you're not doing that. I didn't even feel like I was there at this point. All that left my mouth was probably nervous nose. I felt so gross while this was happening. So confused and so gross. Are you racist? Aren't you a drow? How does that change anything we agreed upon? Why are you doing this? You don't need to do this. I thought to myself while saying, but we agreed. You can't. Warlock was laughing in the background, and Cleric didn't seem bothered either. Though after I spent a good amount of time shutting down the Artificer request, Cleric did speak up to help me. Hey man, my character is lawful good, so he wouldn't let you do this kind of stuff. So if he did, I'd stop you anyway. He helped me convince Artificer to knock it off before I ended the session. Remember turning off my monitor and staring at my reflection for a good 5 minutes, trying to process what the hell has just happened. I'd never dealt with anything like this before. It just felt really weird and gross. I went to sleep feeling awful. Next morning, I woke up to a message from Artificer. It was basically a long rant about how it pained him to see such a talented aspiring DM fall so short as to commit the mistake of limiting a player's creative choices that way. You're limiting of trying to... This DM is literally trying to stop you from struggle snuggling, committing sexual violence like you guys described and talked about in session 0. If somebody's unconscious and you commit sexual acts on them, that's struggle snuggle. That's literally sexual violence. That's exactly what you talked about. And this apparently, if this is considered to you limiting player freedom, then you can go get bent. He insists that I could have found a creative solution to let him have his scene while keeping it within the table rules, such as revealing that it was all a dream or a fantasy inside my character's head. He said he would overlook it since it was a first-time GM, but he was very disappointed in me. Oh my god, this guy can go get fucked. You already agreed ahead of time in the rules, no sexual violence. And DM is trying to make sure to prop it up. With the gall of this guy to get offended with DM for the things agreed with on session 0. DM, you should allow me to struggle snuggle this drow because I wanted to do so, and you should have found a creative solution to work around it. How about you don't do that? How about you don't be a weirdo that starts struggling snuggling somebody that's unconscious in game? That's fucking weird, dude. I freaking wish I had the message to this day, because god, it was a lot. I didn't have any of that, but thought I really wish I could say that was the end. As much as I wished I could say I left then and there, I didn't. You see, at this point in time, we were living with the plague. I drifted away from the high school friends due to quarantine. Also, some bad things happened those first few months that affected me deeply. While I'm not comfortable with relaying everything that happened to me at that time, I can safely say it was the lowest point I've ever been in my short little life. I was desperate for affection and any kind of validation I could find. The game was my one social interaction of the week. Could not lose that too. No D&D is better than bad D&D, and no matter how socially starved you are, you could have reconnected with some other friends, could have texted them, hit them up, maybe find, I don't know, a better group out there. If one group is not working out and it's just not going great, it's just much easier to scrap it and find other people. You didn't have to stick with these guys. You didn't have to. You really didn't have to. I understand you're at your low point, but honestly, the golden rule of no D&D is better than bad D&D is accurate. Your time would have been spent, in my opinion, better looking for other people to play with or reconnecting with old friends over Discord and stuff, trying to get them to play together. I feel like there could have been way better options than stick around with these guys. The guys literally making you feel bad because you didn't let him struggle snuggle a drow NPC. This is not worth it. This isn't worth it playing with this guy. Every weekend, I felt miserable. I dreaded sitting at my desk, knowing I was about to spend another 4 hours completely zoned out. I didn't care about the game anymore. The bad comments about me got worse, and the thought of getting back into bed and doing nothing only made me feel even worse in the comments. At the end of the night, maybe I'd get a pat on the back and a good job. I can't remember much of what happened in the next few months of the campaign. As far as I remember, there weren't any more attempts by Artificer to have any creative liberties, but the overall toxic behavior persisted. All that sticks in my mind are vague memories of Agatha the Banshee and a heated discussion about her somehow. There was something about radiant damage and metagaming and warlock yelling. I just didn't care and kind of forgot. Mostly because of IRL problems and also because I just didn't like those people. If you didn't like those people, you probably should stop playing with them. You have self-autonomy. You have the ability to do things for yourself. If you don't want to play this game, you should have said, nope, enough, we're not having any more sessions, and just rid of them. Simple as that. What I'm going to say is probably going to sound harsh to some people, but nobody in the world is going to be good at getting yourself out of a bad spot than yourself. You gotta pull yourself out by your own bootstraps and get yourself in a situation that sounds better, or at least not crap like this situation. There are moments and times you gotta get a grip on a situation and do something about putting yourself a distance from anything bad that you're dealing with. And right now, you're not having fun with this group. You need to block them. You need to stop talking with them, and you need to just completely cut off all contact with them on Roll20, on Discord, on whatever, everywhere that you have any sort of connection with them. You need to cut the contact. At times, you can't wait for somebody else to come rescue you. You have to rescue yourself. I wish there's been some kind of straw that broke the camel's back, but there really wasn't. One day, a few hours before game night, I was in my room and thought, you know what? Screw it, I'm EP. So I deleted the Discord server, blocked everyone, and went back to bed. I even deleted my Discord account, afraid they'll try to contact me with Smurf or whatever. That was my one D&D experience until late 2020, when I decided to try again, as the pandemic was still making me feel terribly isolated. Found myself a group of friends who had not only become my TTRPG party, but also the most freaking kind people I've ever met. We've been friends for 40 years now, and are traveling together for the second time now in January. These people and my mom also pushed me to catch up on some much needed therapy, and now I'm a lot better, though still a work in progress. I've also since gotten in contact with my high school friends again over the last year. We're getting close to each other again. And guess what? We're playing Ordum Paranormal RPG every Tuesday night, and we are 7 sessions in. So there's a lesson to be learned with this story, I guess, is that no D&D is better than bad D&D. Also, don't be a bigot, plus, you know, you're socially starved. There's some kind of cool people out there who will appreciate you the way you are. You don't need to be around people who make you feel bad. At least, the story ended on a good note, and I'm happy for you. The last line, no D&D is better than bad D&D, is extremely important to remember for anybody, whether you're brand new to the hobby, brand new to TTRPGs, D&D, what have you, or you're somebody that's been around the hobby for years. Playing no games and finding a different group out there is better than dealing with a crap group of a disaster party, and it's just not worth it. It's not worth your time, your mental health. It's just not worth it at all. If there are bad people out there, if there are bad apples in your group, if there are problem players or problem DM, you need to remove them. They're like a malignant plague. Sometimes you just gotta snip it out and get it out of the system. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.